Imagine sitting in a pristine lobby for 2 endless hours, watching strangers breeze through doors you thought were meant for you. And the moment they realize who you really are, everything shifts. Too late. If Danielle Malan had known how this morning would unfold, how drawn out, disorienting, and disheartening it would become, she would have chosen comfort over presentation. The pointed heels she wore were meant for confident struts and swift departures, not for idle waiting, not for quiet endurance. But still she stood, unwavering, beneath the towering glass canopy of Westbridge Corporate Plaza, the Arizona sun glaring off the windows like silent judgment. Her portfolio was gripped tightly beneath her arm, her mind echoing with every note she'd scribbled, every mock interview rehearsed. Today was supposed to be transformative. She had prepared meticulously, exhaustively, expecting a challenge, but not a battle for dignity. Danielle was early, always was, 15 minutes ahead of schedule, just like she'd been taught. Early is punctual, on time is already late. Inside, the air smelled of lemon polish and quiet affluence. A grand sculpture of twisted metal stood sentinel near the elevators, as if guarding secrets she hadn't yet earned the right to hear. She approached the front desk with polite assurance. The receptionist, barely glancing up from behind perfectly painted nails and a slow chew of gum, answered with professional detachment. "Hi, I'm Danielle Milan. I have a 10 a.m. meeting with Craig Ellison." Click-clack went the keyboard, a hushed conversation into the receiver, then a nod and the words, "Mr. Ellison said he'll be right with you. Please have a seat." With a composed smile, Danielle lowered herself into a lobby chair by the windows, legs crossed neatly, blazer straightened, portfolio centered in her lap like armor. 5 minutes passed, then 10, then 15. At first, she remained calm. Meetings run late. Executives juggle crises. She checked her notes one last time, scrolling with careful precision, her nerves dancing just beneath her skin. "You belong here," she reminded herself. "Breathe. Stay poised. You earned this." 30 minutes in, she rose and approached the desk again, gracefully, deliberately. "Just checking in," she said, still smiling. "Is Mr. Ellison still available?" The receptionist barely lifted her gaze. "Still on a call," she replied with a practiced smile that said nothing and promised less. "He'll be right with you." Danielle nodded and returned to her seat, but something inside her shifted. The air, once cool and clean, felt suddenly dense. Was she overreacting? Was this normal protocol? She watched two men walk in, confident, laughing about their golf swings. The receptionist leapt up, offered them coffee, ushered them inside like old friends. Danielle blinked. Once, twice. Maybe they had appointments too. Maybe not. She wanted to believe the best, but that belief was beginning to bruise. The tightness in her chest wasn't fury. Not yet. It was something more subtle, more insidious. A simmering awareness that she was being made to wait differently. She tried to push the feeling down. "This isn't the time," she told herself. "Don't be dramatic. Don't be difficult." 58 minutes in, the thread of her composure began to fray. Her fingers tugged lightly at her blazer seams. She adjusted her posture, trying to appear alert but relaxed, as if the delay didn't sting, as if her patience wasn't being worn thin. But this wasn't just about time anymore. This was about presence, hers, and how persistently it was being overlooked. From her seat, she observed the revolving door of guests being greeted and guided back. Two more white men entered, casual but polished. They were met with nods, handshakes, and warm small talk. Danielle wasn't even glanced at. She wasn't just being made to wait. She was being erased. The receptionist no longer looked in her direction. No updates, no acknowledgement. She might as well have been part of the furniture. a decorative object quietly occupying space, but not welcome. And then from across the room came the first human moment of the morning. A janitor, older, gray-haired, pushing a supply cart passed by. His eyes met hers. Not a glance, not a glare. A simple nod. Quiet recognition between two people who knew too well what it meant to be unseen. Danielle returned the nod with a soft, fleeting smile. Even now, even after all this, she didn't want to seem unprofessional, didn't want to appear angry or ungrateful or difficult. Even now, she calculated every breath she took. At 11:15 a.m., her back ached from the rigid chair. Her muscles strained, but her face remained composed, still poised, still waiting. Even though her patience was no longer silent, it had become a scream no one heard. Then the elevator doors opened with a whisper. A tall woman stepped out in a navy pantsuit, Avery Lindstrom. Danielle recognized her immediately. Vice President of Operations. The kind of woman who spoke on leadership panels, whose presence commanded rooms before she even spoke. The receptionist shot to her feet. "Good morning, Miss Lindstrom. Coffee? Water?" Avery smiled, shook her head, and glided past without pause. Danielle sat up straighter, pressed her lips together, fixed her gaze on a spot just past the reception desk, willing herself to look busy, important, worthy. At 11:30, she stood again. Her steps were calm, but heavy with something unspoken. "Hi," she said, voice unwavering. "Just wondering if I should reschedule. It's been quite a while." The receptionist blinked at her, surprised, almost as if she had forgotten Danielle existed. "Oh, uh, Mr. Ellison is still wrapping up a call. He'll be right with you." The same line, the same empty smile, the same dismissal. Danielle nodded, not for the receptionist, but for herself, because if she didn't nod, she might break. Back in her seat, she crossed her legs once more, but this time her heart was burning behind her ribs, a slow, relentless heat. She would not cry, she would not shift uncomfortably, she would not give them anything. The clock ticked. The lobby hummed. Life went on, around her, but not with her. By 11:58, her phone screen glowed with numbers she didn't want to see. 2 full hours. No apology, no explanation, no recognition. The receptionist was now laughing with a delivery guy. Two men clinked coffee cups and disappeared behind glass doors. Danielle sat in the center of it all, silent, unseen, her presence treated like background noise no one wanted to address. She glanced around again. Would they have kept a white man waiting like this? Would Craig Ellison ignore him for 2 hours? Was she imagining this? Was it all in her head? Her heel slipped slightly as she shifted position. The squeak on the marble echoed just enough to draw attention. 3 heads turned in unison, brief glances, cold, irritated, as if she were the disruption, as if her presence was the problem. Danielle pressed her lips tightly together, a fragile breath catching in her throat. With slow deliberation, she uncrossed her legs and stilled her entire body, her movements purposeful, almost ceremonial. Her mind wandered, back to the streets of Little Rock, Arkansas, where her mother's words echoed like a gospel carved into her soul. "You've got to be twice as good, baby girl, just to get half as far." Back then, Danielle had dismissed those words as mere generational warnings, the kind elders offered with a sigh and a faraway look in their eyes. But sitting now in this gleaming marble lobby, walls of glass reaching toward the heavens, she felt the truth of them like an invisible hand pressing against her chest. She opened her portfolio again, though she didn't need to. Every note, every statistic, every bullet point was already imprinted on her mind with painstaking precision. She wasn't reviewing. She was hiding, Behind leather and paper and a fragile calm that threatened to splinter, under the weight of shame, fury, and the kind of bone-deep weariness that doesn't come from lack of sleep, but from years of being unseen. Then, a flicker of motion in her peripheral vision. Danielle's eyes lifted. Craig Ellison. There he was, emerging from the glass doors behind the front desk. Tall, lean, silver at the temples, crisply ironed shirt, clipboard casually tucked under his arm like an accessory to his authority. He strolled through the lobby, sharing a laugh with another manager, the sound careless and easy. Danielle straightened reflexively, spine rigid with quiet defiance. "See me?" she whispered internally. "Just see me." But Craig's eyes swept past her with the disinterest one might grant a potted plant or an unused chair. Not even a flicker of recognition. Then he vanished through another door, still mid-laughter, leaving behind a silence that settled like dust. Danielle sank back into the chair, her heart hollowing out. This wasn't mere anger anymore, not even confusion. It was something deeper, a soul-tired ache that had no bottom. The kind of ache that makes you question if the fight is worth it, if the doors are even meant to open for women who look like you. Her eyes drifted to the exit. She thought about walking out, about preserving whatever pride hadn't been scraped raw. But no, walking out would feel too much like surrender. And Danielle Milan did not surrender. Not after the sacrifices. Not after the sweat and the silence she had swallowed to get here. The receptionist glanced at her and quickly looked away, her expression somewhere between discomfort and irritation, as if Danielle's very presence was an inconvenience. Danielle's hands tightened in her lap, knuckles pale against the dark fabric of her skirt. But then, just as her resolve wavered, the glass doors swung open, and everything shifted. The echo of polished shoes against marble pierced the hush like a bell. Not one pair, several. A cluster of impeccably dressed professionals swept into the room with an air of unspoken authority. The kind that didn't demand attention, it commanded it. Danielle saw the receptionist sit taller, smoothing her blouse. Conversations faltered. Energy recalibrated. Danielle's pulse jumped. She recognized them. Martin Beasley, the CEO, Sandra Whitlock, Senior Director of Finance. These weren't just executives. They were architects of futures, movers of mountains. Danielle froze for a heartbeat, unsure if she should rise. But then, Sandra's eyes met hers, and unlike Craig's gaze, this one landed. It held. "Danielle Memlan," Sandra called out, her voice warm and clear, slicing cleanly across the lobby. "I didn't know you were coming in today." And just like that, the entire room turned. Heads swiveled. Conversation ceased. Even Craig's eyes snapped toward her. Danielle stood, calm but deliberate, her hands smoothing her skirt as she slid her portfolio beneath her arm like armor. Her heels tapped rhythmically against the floor as she approached, not rushing, not hesitating, just steady, certain. Martin greeted her first, hand extended and smile genuine. "It's good to see you again, Danielle. We were just talking about you last week. Your presentation at the Leadership Summit, remarkable." She returned the handshake with practiced grace. "Thank you, Mr. Beasley. It's an honor to see you again." Behind them, Craig stumbled forward like someone waking from a dream. The confidence that had draped him like a tailored suit had fallen off his shoulders. His face flushed with a shade of embarrassment money couldn't bleach. "Mlan," he blurted, his voice suddenly bright with performative enthusiasm. "So sorry about the wait. We had a situation. No excuse. I personally apologize." Danielle turned to him slowly, her face composed in a mask of polite detachment. "2 hours is a long time for a situation, Mr. Ellison," she said, her voice smooth but firm. just loud enough for the audience of executives to hear. Martin raised an eyebrow. Sandra's arms folded loosely, her eyes keen with interest. Craig fumbled with excuses, calls, emergencies, nonsense. But no one was listening anymore. They were listening to her. Sandra gently touched Danielle's arm. If you have time, we're heading up to the executive conference room. We'd love your input on a few projects. Danielle nodded. I'd be happy to. Craig tried to reinsert himself, offering to carry her bag, fetch coffee, anything. But Danielle didn't even turn. She angled her body towards Sandra and Martin, leaving Craig in her wake, swallowed by the quiet humiliation of irrelevance. She didn't look back, but she could feel his shame trailing her like heat off sunburned skin. Inside the executive suite, the world changed. The air felt lighter, real. Conversations flowed without tension or performance. Danielle was no longer a name lost on an itinerary. She was the epicenter. The room revolved around her. Martin slid a folder across the table. We're designing a new leadership initiative, he explained. And after the summit, we knew you had to be part of it. Danielle opened it. Plans, projections, budgets. This wasn't a meeting. It was a door, an invitation, a seat at the very table she'd once believed she'd never even see. Sandra leaned in. Her voice was low, unwavering. We need more people like you. People who see what's broken before it breaks. People who lead without climbing over others to get there. Danielle nodded slowly, letting the weight of it settle. She asked sharp questions. She offered bold solutions. And they listened, not to be polite, but because her voice carried weight. Across the glass wall, Craig lingered near his office like a ghost, peeking, hovering, watching the woman he had dismissed as invisible now become unforgettable. Danielle saw him. Their eyes locked briefly. She didn't nod. She didn't smile. She simply looked. And then, without fanfare, she turned away, toward the conversation that actually mattered. After an hour, Martin stood again. Think it over, he said. But I'd love to see you in this role. Danielle took his hand. Thank you. I'll give it the thought it deserves. At the door, Sandra walked with her. And Danielle, she added casually, if anyone ever treats you like you don't belong here, come to me. No filters, no middlemen. Danielle gave her a smile then, a real one, deep, knowing. Thank you, Sandra. I'll remember that. Behind her, Craig stood in the hallway, pretending to shuffle papers, the glow of relevance slipping from his fingertips. What Danielle couldn't know, not yet, was that this moment was already casting ripples far beyond that room. A week later, her official offer arrived. This wasn't a side project. It was a launch pad, a direct path to a regional executive position, a real title, real power, a chance to build something enduring. Danielle accepted, not out of revenge, not for validation, but because she deserved it. Every late night, every unanswered email, every moment she'd swallowed being sidelined, dismissed, erased, this was her return. The same morning her promotion was announced, Craig was summoned into a closed-door meeting. The whispers spread like wildfire. No one needed confirmation. They knew. One too many missed meetings. One too many silent insults. One too many women, especially black women, left waiting, unseen. By Friday, Craig's name was gone from his office door. Danielle didn't cheer. She didn't even flinch. She moved forward, step by step, as she always had. Her first major meeting was filled to capacity, department heads, senior leaders, hungry new hires. Danielle stood at the front of the room, wrapped in a crisp white blouse and a slate gray skirt. Not clothes, armor. She clicked to the first slide. Good ideas don't care where they come from, she said, and neither should we. The room leaned in, because this wasn't just about one morning in a lobby anymore. It was about changing the whole system. Danielle's rise wasn't about ego or revenge. It was a quiet promise she'd made to herself in that lobby. The moment no one would look her way. They do not get to define my worth. I will not shrink to fit into spaces I was born to lead. And for every young woman who comes after her, especially the ones who look like her, Danielle is clearing the path. So if this story reached you, stirred something inside you, don't let it end here. Share it, speak it, let it breathe. Because sometimes telling one story can change more than just one life.